Of all of Zelda's repeated landmarks, Hyrule Field has always been the odd one out. It has no iconic imagery like Death Mountain, no culture like Zora's Domain, we never start the game there, and it's never had any dungeon tied to it in all of Zelda history. Yet despite this, when we imagine Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess and Breath of the Wild, the image our mind conjures up is riding Epona across this vast plain. It's synonymous with Zelda itself, despite the lack of lore, relevance, or anything at all to make it stand out. Despite its relative emptiness compared to the rich density of discovery present in the location it connects, it plays an important role in the cycle of a Zelda game. The lack of distinguishing and distracting features serves as an empty space for players to reflect on the adventure they've been on. The absence of distraction allows players' minds to wander and lets them soak up the world, because it's not trying to distract them with the next shiny thing, it's allowing them to just relax in an undisturbed area. Hyrule Field's one claim to fame is that it's the location we visit the most often over the course of the adventure. This is most likely the reason it's the most frequently occurring memory in our minds, but I think there's a greater reason behind it. The moment you step out into Hyrule Field is always a monumental step in a Zelda game. It's when you get a full grasp of just how big this adventure is going to be, and how special this world is. Ocarina of Time's moment is extremely heart-wrenching, as it occurs immediately after an emotional high point of the story, saying goodbye to Saria. This moment is about Link leaving behind his humble beginnings, and stepping out into a world that's completely alien to him. This conversation is the closing chapter of his life up to this point, the moment where he has to say goodbye to everything he's ever known, with the foreboding exit exuding an overpowering presence as your best friend gives a sorrowful farewell, which is immediately juxtaposed by the enormous tone shift into a grand sweeping camera shot showcasing a landscape that stretches as far as the N64 can render. These intense tone shifts from one emotional extreme to the other can be seen as creating a tonal inconsistency, but I see it a different way. This is the storyteller breaking down your emotional walls with a somber moment to engage you emotionally, then unleashing an overwhelmingly positive moment that rocks you to your core thanks to your heightened emotional state. While it's almost impossible to play Ocarina of Time not knowing what Hyrule Field looks like ahead of time, I wonder if the sublime opening of this game is a detriment to this moment, showcasing this field beforehand and what you can expect the world to look like. I further wonder if this step-out moment would be just as iconic as Breath of the Wild's if Nintendo went out of their way to hide how sprawling Hyrule Field would be. Speaking of Breath of the Wild's moment, I suppose it's not technically Hyrule Field, because you're not standing in the field. However, it is the centerpiece of this tapestry of a frame. It's the thing your eyes will be drawn to first, before expanding out to the castle and Death Mountain. The immediacy of this moment, compared to Ocarina's, makes it far more memorable, as it takes place less than a minute into your adventure. There's also an interesting contrast between these two incarnations of Hyrule Field. Ocarina of Time's Hyrule Field could be described as barren by today's standards, but I see it as a more open plain, with the emphasis of the new freedom available in the 3D realm, with as little in the way as possible to obscure your view. This gives it a serene and peaceful feel. The cheery, infectious music and emptiness makes the field as relaxing as the opening of the game made it out to be. This actually becomes a knock against the game, as when you travel through time and see the desecration of the castle, you begin to imagine what kind of horrors lie beyond the gates, and you step out to find that it's exactly the same, just as soothing as ever, which is kind of a letdown. Breath of the Wild takes a different approach in conveying Hyrule Field, a place where everything is trying to kill you and will do so with minimal effort. The Guardians swarm across the plain, they are faster than your horse, they can obliterate your health, and the only way to beat them in the early game is to play the most heart attack inducing game of Kuko with a death laser. I know why they did this, they're trying to tell you to stay away from the castle because you're not ready for it yet. but they spread out the Guardians really far across Hyrule Field, to the point that crossing it becomes a nerve-wracking experience even in the late game. It's a weird contrast to have this tranquil grass terrain infested with malice-infused automatons who seek destruction, firing devastating lasers to set the field aflame. While Hyrule Field may be the least exciting part of Zelda, its role is instrumental and cements its place as the most iconic location in Zelda history. I'll be back in 2 days. In the meantime, here's a video about the saddest moments in the franchise's history.